button just now and turning us into speaker mode, okay? And then I will proceed with the beginning. So please, if you do not want to be recorded, let your camera turn off and mute now. Okie doke, so I'm turning us into speaker mode, perfect. So for those who maybe on mute, please mute yourself just for the interest of recordings as well, because otherwise your face will pop up on the screen. But yes, so let's get into why we are here. So as I said, this is an event hosted by the Greens of Cllr and has 3 amazing speakers by the names of Pauline Pringle, Dr. Kevin Brown, and Diana McIntyre Pike. So they're going to be speaking to us for about 15 minutes or so each, just to outline some of their particular perspectives on Jamaican deportation back to Jamaica, and also trying to tell us about the experiences of those people who have experienced that situation. Now, just to quickly outline for people who don't know about this situation at all, Jamaican deportation is basically implemented by the UK Home Office. It's part of a hostile environment. The hostile environment is a policy that has been directed in many forms, in housing, in immigration, but also in business and work as well. And it's directed against, but this particular hostile environment agenda has been directed against Jamaican nationals who have been identified as illegal immigrants. And I put illegal in quotation marks as well. So why is this important? We remember how Jamaican migrants came to build back post-war Britain. We also value the progress that, you know, Jamaica and the UK have made between the both of the nations. But why we think this particular event is important is because we support those who have experienced this type of upheaval and also have experienced this betrayal that many feel has happened to them by being removed from the UK and turned back to Jamaica. And so we stand with them, and we really want to provide a platform to better understand their experiences and understand a way in which we can collectively come together to support and amplify the voices of many people already who is championing and fighting and speaking out about this particular policy. So we'll be hearing from our speakers in just a second, but just to further elaborate on this particular situation that is happening at the moment, I will just give you a little bit of information. So deportation is currently still happening during lockdown. The deportation of Jamaican nationals are still happening in lockdown. And this is during a time when so many people are, you know, really conflicted, but trying to work with their community, but also saddened and having so much going on that people are still being taken from their homes and taken to detention centers. And we've already seen how this particular act of deporting people has also continued to spread coronavirus as well. So if it is not so bad that we have a pandemic and we're also living through global racial relations as well, where people are still having to face inhumane mass deportations in the UK. The Windrush Lessons Report published last year during the pandemic has also made 30 recommendations for the Home Office to address what the report has described as institutional ignorance and thoughtlessness towards race and the history of Black people in the UK. It's gone on to say that there should be no plans to deport people to the Caribbean, given the failure to implement the recommendations and actually learn the lessons that they should have learned from the Windrush Lessons Report. There are many other published reports, including the Joint Parliamentary Committee, that also highlights the discrimination that has been faced through the immigration policy that we are currently experiencing, including policing and the criminal justice system. So I just want to quickly, before I hand over, just give thanks to some incredible campaigners that have continued to work on this. So Barack UK, BAME Lawyers for Justice, Global, a group of legal representatives, both from the Caribbean and the UK, a lot of grassroots organizations, the Windrush Justice groups, allies of Black and African people, but also Black nationals that continue to push this agenda as well, including their families who are continuously trying to fight against the government about this particular policy. And in addition to that, late last year, there were 82 publicly recognized Black or people of African and Caribbean heritage who also signed a public letter against this policy. So that is a short snippet of the context of what we are dealing with and the people who have been affected. But I do just want to give thanks to all of the community groups and the people who are constantly working on this agenda. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker of today, which is Dr. Kevin Brown, who will be speaking to us about his perspective. But before I let Kevin start, I do just want to just quickly read his bio because it's absolutely incredible, the amount of work that he's been doing for the community, both here and Jamaica. So Dr. Kevin Brown was recently elected as the UK North representative on the newly established Global Jamaica Diaspora Council. The Global Jamaica Diaspora Council is an advisory and consultative body that was established by the government of Jamaica in order to facilitate more effective management between Jamaica and the diaspora. Kevin is the chair of the board of the Jamaican Diaspora UK as well, which is a national organization that seeks to protect the interests of Jamaicans in the UK. Kevin has held leadership positions in several Jamaican organizations over the last 15 years, which has given him the experience and knowledge of the key issues that affect the Jamaican diaspora and the UK. He has been actively engaged in bringing issues that affect the diaspora to the attention of Jamaican government, including justice for Windrush victims, immigration, deportation, safety of returning residents, national diaspora policy, and youth engagement. Well, fun fact for you all, he is also a radio presenter and host of the Talk Back show, so tune in there. And Kevin has a master's and PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Nottingham and is a project lead for global engineering. In 2018, he received a Power in Poetry Award for service to the community. So I could read way more on Kevin's bio, but I'm sure that I wouldn't do it justice, Kevin, for all of the things that you have done. And I just want to say thank you again for your time and for being with us today. It's incredible to have you. So please take the floor.
Thank you, Azzees, for your introduction, and good evening or good night to everyone who's joined the Zoom tonight. It's a very cold evening in the UK. So I hope everyone is inside somewhere warm, and even better if you're like Pauline, who's one of our speakers, who's in Jamaica. So she's in a very tropical environment. Tonight, we are discussing a very important topic as it relates to deportations that continue in spite being in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to start by talking to you about a young lady. Her name is Joy Gardner. She was only 40 years old when the police stormed into her house in 1993 to effect a deportation order. She was restrained with handcuffs, leather straps. She was gagged, and then they proceeded to wrap tape around her head and body, all 13 feet of tape, adhesive tape around her. Unfortunately, she couldn't breathe. Sounds familiar? And she subsequently died. I'm telling you about Joy Gardner because I want you to understand that deportation is not a benign process where someone is simply picked up, put on a plane, and removed from this country. We have cases and examples of people who've actually died during the process. Another example is a gentleman called Jimmy Mubenga, who was also killed when he was restrained and during a deportation. And there are others as well. So I want you to understand the seriousness of deportation. That it is a process that has resulted in fatalities. And it is a process that unfortunately, the government continues to implement as part of its immigration control mechanism. And the unfortunate thing is that as it relates to Jamaicans, Britain and Jamaica have had a long-standing relationship that has spanned hundreds of years. And in fact, that relationship continues insofar as the head of state of Jamaica is the Queen of Britain. And despite all of that, we have these deportations. Now, you may have been told, if you listen to the rhetoric from the government, that the people who are being deported are murderers and rapists, and these are hardened criminals. But in most cases, that's simply not true. And people are being deported for non-violent offenses. In some cases, they have been deported because of traffic violations. And so what we would like to see is reform in the immigration rules. The first thing that I think we should look at is the ending of indefinite detention. Why is it that you cannot indefinitely detain someone and for whatever cause that the criminal cause that the police may identify, but you can do that for someone who is under immigration control? And you have migrants, asylum seekers, people who have survived torture and trafficking, who are indefinitely detained in this country, indefinitely. And even their access to legal advice sometimes is not as what we would expect. And so I think that, there are campaigners who are asking for limits to be implemented. Some have suggested 28 days limit on detention, and I think that should be looked at because I think when you talk about human rights and the fact that you're detaining people who are not criminals for the most part. Some of them have just simply overstayed and are living here on expired visas, and yet still are being detained as if they're common criminals. I think something just isn't right about that. And the other thing as well is that we know that indefinitely detaining people without explaining to them why they're being detained has caused severe mental health issues. In fact, according to a group called Detention Action, they've noted that since 2000, at least 49 people have died in UK detention centers. So as I've said, deportation and immigration controls that we have in Britain, they're not benign. People are dying due to some of these rules. The other thing that I'd like us to look at is an end to the deportation of individuals who came to Britain as children. What you have happening is that you have adults, people who've entered the UK, some as young as 4 years old. They've only known the UK as home. And in their adult life, unfortunately, they may have come in contact with the police and subsequently convicted. And then due to the rule, the compulsory deportation, or the rule that surrounds people who are or affects people who've been convicted of a crime with a sentence span greater than 12 months, they find that they're being sent back to Jamaica, a country that most of them have lost touch with. They have no linkages at all with Jamaica. They left when they were children. They've grown up in Britain. Britain is their home. They see themselves as British. But unfortunately, they find themselves being deported. I mean, we have 40-year-olds, being sent back to a place that they've never really lived in. So I think this needs to be looked at. And the recommendation here is that for people who came to Britain at age 12 years or younger, then, and especially if the crime that they've committed is non-violent, then a deportation should not be automatic. And that goes to my final point, this whole situation around compulsory deportation, and whereby people who've been convicted, most of them of non-violent crime, but because the sentence is longer than 12 months, are faced with compulsory deportation. I think that what we need is a more compassionate system that looks at each individual case on its own merit. And because there are some people who, by deporting them, you are actually sending them to a worse situation than if they stayed in Britain, whether it is with respect to the fact that they have no connections to anyone in Jamaica and so are vulnerable to crime when they do enter back into Jamaica, and find them, or the fact that they might find themselves becoming destitute in the country. So I think that each deportation case should really be judged on its own merit rather than the compulsory system that we have now. So what I'm trying to outline really is the hostile immigration environment that we live in. And what we're saying is that we need to now look at these rules. And if we're going to live in a country that claims that it is a defender of human rights and a defender of freedom, well, it must be a defender of human rights for all. Can't be for some. And it must be freedom for all, not for some. And why do Jamaicans come to Britain? Because it's important to understand the history, because one of the challenges we have as well is this cognitive dissonance, or willfully forgetting. We willfully forget why Jamaicans are in Britain. So let me just quickly remind you. Britain has had centuries, years of involvement in Jamaica, spanning 400 years. Britain occupied Jamaica from 1655 to 1962. So there's a very strong relationship there, albeit tragic, in the sense that for the vast majority of the time, people who look like me were held in chains under chattel slavery. And when slavery was abolished in the 19th century, we then moved into becoming landless peasants. And even today, most Jamaicans are land. It's an ongoing issue. And so the economic climate of Jamaica has always been challenging, and hence why people have always migrated, trying to seek a better life in quotes. But what is more important to note is that in addition to that long-standing relationship spanning 400 years, after World War II, when Britain needed labor and people to, well, in fact, before World War II, when Britain needed people to fight the war, there were Caribbean nationals, there were Jamaicans who fought in the war. This is a hidden history. When we're having celebrating our war heroes, we sometimes forget that our war heroes some of them were Black. Some of them were Jamaicans, Bajans, Trinidadians who fought for this country. And after World War II, they came, they were asked to come, and it's important to note, they were asked to come to help to rebuild the country. And they came. My grandparents came, my grandfather came in the 1950s. They came to help. They thought they were coming to the mother country because they were British. They were British. Their passports said they were British subjects. And so they came. And of course, unfortunately, when they came, they entered a hostile environment in terms of the levels of racism that they had to endure. But things started to change in the 1970s in terms of immigration rules. And since those changes started in the 1970s, the immigration rules towards Jamaicans and the Caribbean Commonwealth, but Jamaicans in particular, have become more and more restrictive. And until we got to the stage where in the mid 2000s, around 2006, rather, a Labour government, if you can believe that, decided to introduce visas. So Jamaicans now require a visa to visit Britain. Bear in mind that the Queen of Britain is the head of state of Jamaica. So wrap your head around that, right? That a Jamaican who's head of who needs a visa to enter the country where their head of state resides. I mean, it defies logic, but that's where we are. And the visa application is expensive and it's non-refundable. And it's been impactful because the immigration levels from Jamaica to this country have fallen off like a stone since that was introduced. Bear in mind that Jamaicans used to come here as students to learn, to educate themselves, and so on. So that has been impacted significantly, right? And now we have the situation around deportations that are happening. And as I said, the unfortunate thing is that deportees are being caricatured as rapists and murderers. This is what our politicians keep saying. So I just want to encourage you all to focus on the campaign around, one, ending indefinite detentions, two, ending the deportation of people who entered Britain as children, especially those who came here as young as 12 years old or younger, and that deportation should be considered on merit and case by case. It should not be automatically be deported from this country. So I look forward to any questions that you might have, but do get involved and get engaged, because as I said, if we live in a country that claims that it stands for human rights, well, it must be human rights for all people, not just some. Thank you.
Here. I'm sure many people concur with what you say. So if you can, please use your reaction tool at the bottom of your screen. You may need to click participants just to recognize and show appreciation for that really, really plainly put argument for why we really shouldn't be having this situation still occur in the 21st century and here in the UK, as you rightly put, this is a country that's supposed to be standing for human rights. And I like the fact that you started us off with that story, that vivid, it's not even a story, it's that situation of that person, that experience that ultimately ended in their death, and how we have to bring it back to humanity. And ultimately, in a time when mental health is negative for a lot of people because of the situations concerning COVID and lockdown and health and family members, and just survival is high, but at the same time juxtaposed, Black Jamaicans are having to deal with this experience as well, because it is something that we're currently the UK are currently doing. So thank you for outlining that for us. Okay, moving to our next speaker, I do want to encourage everyone. This is a very heavy topic, and I can appreciate it's not easy for everyone, but please take the time, stretch your legs if you need to, drink some water so that you can really digest and absorb this, but also in a way that is manageable for you. And also, if you can, please prepare your questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat. If you cannot type them, that's absolutely fine. I will ask for indications towards the end of this session as well. So introducing our next speaker, Diana McIntyre Pike is a community tourism founder, developer, president, and founder of Country Style Community Tourism Network, villages and businesses. So Diana works to develop community tourism and as a self-help method to improve life chances and enhance skills across the parishes of Jamaica, from Mandeville to its center south to the Treasure Beach, and across to Westmoreland and Hanover. So if you don't already know, those places that I just mentioned are places in Jamaica. So Mandeville and Westmoreland and Hanover and St. Elizabeth, where my grandparents are from as well. And so, yeah, it's really just bringing home the area of Jamaica. So feel free to go and research those places and find out what they look like if you haven't been yourself. Through her extensive network, she offers homestays, village visits, and events, rural district tours, and accredited training to bring Jamaicans and their visitors together in a safe, clean, and well cared for surroundings. Diana's work is recognized internationally, and she has traveled widely to deliver the message of community tourism, the concept which has been adopted into the services of major hotel brands in Jamaica and elsewhere, as well as being accessible as private bookings. We are so happy to have you, Diana. Thank you so much for your time. And we really want to hear from you. What has this effect of deportation been like, and what has been the experience of people being sent back to Jamaica?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very proud of the fact that our network has recently won one of the 17 awards for the world from the newly formed World Tourism Network because of our Villages Businesses program. So we got the Heroes Award, and that tells you that we are being paid attention to. It's been a long journey, and I want you to know, Kevin, that I'm glad you spoke before I did, because I'm in total shock. And when I say shock, I had no idea, neither do any of us down here in Jamaica, that all that you've said has been going on. And that is the problem we have. There's not enough information flow of the reality of the situation with the deportees. And people look at deportees in Jamaica as a negative thing happening, unfortunately, because they all think that they're bad people, criminals, and people coming into the island. And I think there's a problem with that, because we need to change that perception, and our network can help in that respect. We are advocating that the diaspora leadership should be for development, investment, and marketing. That's what we're trying to do. Rudy Page from Making Connections work is helping us by having a brand called Community Economic Tourism. Now, this is something that we need to bring to the table, because if you have people who are being deported, we need to have where they're treated like human beings and with respect. Okay, whatever they may do or whatever they are, if they're there, that they shouldn't be there should be a profile done of them that people like us here can get. So when they come into the island, they're properly received and they're properly presented. Our program, we have steering committees for different communities with different projects. And what we would love is for the deportees to be accepted into the communities with love and caring and a peaceful environment, and not just, you know, shunned as they are now, because I know some of them who are on the street right as we speak, begging and have nowhere to go. And that's not right, you know, for them to be put in a position like that. I know the government has set up where they're received and they have to be in a place together before they are let go on the island, but it's not enough. We in the private sector should know what is happening and what has happened to them. And when you talked about this lady who was, oh my God, tears came to my eyes. I can't believe that in this day and age, that could ever have happened. What year was that, Kevin? What year was that the lady was treated badly?
1993.
No, that makes it worse. That has happened, and it sounds like we have slavery days still. That's what I'm seeing here, and the image that we have, we need to change all of that. So we have in Jamaica the Return Residents Association, very dynamic groups, and all of us need to come together and understand the issues and what is happening. So we're going to depend on Dr. Kevin Brown to keep close to us and let us know how we can work together. We will, and we will. We have enough contacts, we have enough people who have clout on board. And I'm not going to be speaking long, except to say that I'm very committed to have this exposure and to getting people to be more receptive to the deportees. Unfortunately, we could find another name than deportees. I hate the deportee name. And you know, we get set up a database of these people so that we know them before they even arrive. This is so important. And where they, if some of them have contacts in any part of the island or family, well, we would like to know that too, so we can connect with the family. So I think we have a major task ahead of us, but we are committed. No, the one thing that we're trying to set up is a community tourism trust fund, and the diaspora, we want the diaspora to lead that. What this is about is that people would invest in this fund, capital investment, and the interest from that would go towards community projects and for soft loans. And if we can present to some of these people that are the deportee people that we have this network, and if they want to do some business here, because they can't just come and just stand around, they need to connect. We will then be able to meet with them and see what their talents are, what have they been involved with while they've been in Britain, and get them to be a part of helping to develop the businesses in the different communities. So my only plea is that we would be happy, and we are committed to being a connection here. And I know Pauline has the same feeling. You know, we have worked closely together, and I think that we're on the right track. And I'm thanking Rosie for bringing us here, because I never knew all this was going on. I really am most embarrassed, quite frankly, that people have been treated this way in this day and age. I thank you very much, Dr. Kevin Brown, for having opened up the doors, because that's what you have done. You have opened up the doors to make life better for deportees coming, and we're committed to working with you and everyone. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Diana. Thank you. I think really some of the points that you were making was extremely telling. Like the fact that this is not something that is more known about, it really makes me think about the people who travel back to Jamaica. What is their support system? What is the type of help that they do get? What is the type of you know, community organizations that they can tap into, given that this is not something that is, you know, so widely known. And just to put it out there to everyone listening as well, you know, with some of these situations of being detained and deported, they could happen as short as 2 weeks. So as I'm sure you can imagine, with very little time to even recognize that all of this is happening, and also kind of prepare your family and prepare yourself, 2 weeks is a really short time. I don't know anyone who books a holiday within 2 weeks, and that's by choice. So having something that is forced upon you, and you're having to kind of battle with legally as well, and address and try to get appeals and to seek injunctions and judicial reviews, especially if that is not what you're used to, must be so overwhelming, and something that is really hard to kind of grapple with in such a short space of time, and not to include the people who are in detention centers and having to deal with this, and obviously the mental health anguish that comes with it. So thank you for outlining the fact that, Diana, this is something that even in Jamaica we need to make more aware of, people more aware of, and create those community groups and support system to really help. Okay, so going on to our next speaker, Pauline. Thank you, Pauline, for joining us today. We're really, really excited to hear from you. And again, we know you're in Jamaica, so you don't have to tell us how sunny it is. You know, you don't have to rub it in about the mangoes that you're eating or anything like that. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to give you a quick introduction. Pauline, in the Negril community, is administrator for Negril Voice. She was past WRAF officer and resident in the UK for 10 years. She returned to the family property to expand it as a business base, as a community mentor, and practicing real estate. On her returning, she attended the Institute of Political Education and served as a deputy secretary in Kingston and St. Andrew, and as an activist in 4 divisions of local government. Returning to the rural parish of Westmoreland, she served as the JLP spokeswoman in their secretary, becoming a councillor for Western Westmoreland, and later serving as a campaign manager for parliamentarians. I'm sure there is so much more to say, but I also should just add there that over her period, Pauline has produced some work and contributed to 19 books, in addition to living in other countries and supporting other areas as well. So Pauline, please take it away, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. To begin with, if I sound emotional, I am emotional. I left Jamaica 1959 to go to England after finishing high school and commercial college. I went to Queen Elizabeth Hospital to do nursing, and then left Queen Elizabeth Hospital right after graduation to join the Women's Royal Air Force. When I left Jamaica, I left on a British passport. Before I left, I saw people around me. I understood that Britain was opening its doors and calling for help for workers to come into Britain. And there were people who did not have the funds because they were, these are people that had not even have a bank account. So they would sell their horse, their donkeys, the goats. They would even sell homes because they saw it as an opportunity for whichever one could go or couldn't go. Hence the reason when they went, they were then trying to bring in their children and their families to work. They saw it as the motherland and the motherland calling for them. I also began to recognize when I joined the Air Force that not too many years before that in World War II, they also pulled Jamaica regiments to help to fight the war for Britain, World War II. So we had quite a regiment of Jamaicans in the World War. My own uncle died in that war. They torpedoed the ship he was on, and he died. Now, my other uncle who was also in the war, he also went back just before I went to England in '59. And the situation there was not that bad then. But then we had a situation where tuberculosis had hit Britain. And therefore, they need workers because most of the people couldn't go to work. They were traveling on the trains, coughing and whatever, right in a bit, and you had no idea what it was. It's afterwards we found out. So for the ones who went there to try and get work, most of them were pushed in the hospitals, that they work in the laundry departments. Most of them, those were the jobs that was available for them to do. And we had people who were doing teaching or whatever have you, end up in the laundry rooms. We had people end up in some factories, and there were no care or consideration, because you need to remember at that time, Britain did not have electricity to give you air conditioner or whatever have you. They were burning coals. And in burning coals, that was what was creating the problem with the tuberculosis. We learned that while we were there, and we were pushed into the worst homes or whatever have you, because there were no accommodation to accommodate us, even though they were calling for us to come to work there. And when I say us, I'm putting myself in the us, even though I went straight to the hospital, Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. So I didn't have to deal with that, but I had to deal with the colds. And in the nursing homes that we were in, it's cold fire you had to burn until finally some pipes were put in. And I was told if I put my feet on it, I would get chilblain. But I still did because it was cold. When I speak to others, like my uncles and my families and those who were living in Birmingham at the time, the kind of work they were getting, and they were getting hardly any pay for it either, but whatever little they were getting, when they sent little home to Jamaica and they converted it, it helped the families. So they stayed with it, they put up with it. We never saw ourselves as needing another passport beside the British passport, which is what we use for everything. When I joined the Women's Royal Air Force, I joined with the Jamaican passport. In 1962, when Jamaica was offered independence, I was given the choice then to take a Jamaican passport. I didn't see the sense in taking a Jamaican passport because it wasn't even recognized in the rest of the world. And I will explain that. I was sent to Cyprus during the war between Macarius and Grivas, the Turks and Greeks. The British had their camps there, sovereign base area, as they called it. And there was a point in time while the fighting was going on, I was in a bus in Nicosia. And the men with guns, the army guys with the guns, took us off the bus with the guns at our backs, trying to get documentation because they were trying to determine who was Greeks and who was Turks. I was on the bus. At this point, I was not in uniform, but I had my British passport from Jamaica. When they took a look at it, the guy didn't even know where Jamaica was. But it was not a full British passport, it was the one that they gave me when I came to England. So he looked at it and he went to his office and he said, "Where is Jamaica?" The guy took a look at it and he said, "Somewhere in the Caribbean." And so he gave it back to me. They let me go. So I was able to call camp and let them know what was happening because the Britishers were on the bus with me. Those who had British passport, they put the guns on them. So I was able to call for help for them. Thereafter, my Jamaican passport was used to send me down to Nicosia anywhere to do whatever have you for the British, because their passport was not acceptable. Okay, nobody knew who we were as Jamaicans. So I was used, and I won't go further into that because that's military, whatever. Sufficient to say, in returning to England, when they were advertised, you're trying to get accommodation, the newspapers were carrying it very clearly, the Telegraph, all of them. No blacks need apply. We couldn't get accommodation. I was traveling with another Air Force person and myself. We went into London and we tried to get accommodation in a hotel room. And because I was black, they would give her a room, but they wouldn't give me room. We had to get back to call our commanding officer for them to call. And so the adjutant called and booked a room so that we were able to be accommodated because I was black. But I was serving the British Air Force. Okay. We saw situations where a lot of Jamaicans, and I understood at the time because I worked in Central Drafting Office. So I understand that every citizen, they can determine even in the air where you are born, and the children takes the father's country of domicile. We have children who are born to British fathers, but they are not classified British they were classified Jamaicans. So when they want to send them home, they were able to, if they wanted to. Even the children who were born there were ignored as Britishers. Okay. Some of the things that, and I'm talking about my period in England during the Windrush, because I went there, as I said, from 59. I never left here till 73 when I came back home to take care of my dad. However, the Jamaicans, we had a lot of Jamaicans who then were sent to Britain to be educated to come back to Jamaica to take on positions. What Britain did when Britain leave us, we were not able to fulfill our professional employment areas. We had to be importing teachers from Britain, dentists, lawyers, doctors, all the professionals. So what Britain did to show us that they were in charge, what they did, they paid them a supplemental income so that they could build houses up in the hills or whatever have you, and we would never ever be able to stand up to their standards. Well, thank God for Jamaican and Jamaican people, because yes, whatever we do, we reach for the top, and whatever we do, we try to do it to the best. Any country we go into. So that was lucky for us, good for us. So guess what? In 62, by 62, when we were independent, enough of our guys had gone to Britain. Some of them now coming back, including our very first, no, second prime minister here, because he was sent to Britain to be trained. And he came back as a Queen's Counsel. What I'm saying to you, even then, we Jamaicans were looking at Britain as we're not at Africa. We were not looking to Africa. We were looking to Britain. And Britain didn't want anything to do with us. They treated us so poorly, so badly. So when I listened to Dr. Brown's speech, and I listened to him talking about what they did, I'm not surprised because I've seen other things. I've seen Britain, how they disavow things that they do, and they still do, because I was at 3LAA wing when we were sending soldiers to fight Ian Smith battles. But the only instruction I was given is not to send a black down there. And then Britain said they didn't have any, they were not concerned with it. So I know they don't speak the truth. I signed 10 years Official Secrets Act to prevent, which they said then I couldn't speak about anything. That is gone now. I am 80 years old, and therefore I can speak what it is. I have lived and I have worked in the different countries, and I've never seen any country treat its people like Britain treat blacks in Britain. And I went there to Britain because I lived in Cyprus, as I said. I had detachment in Germany, France, Singapore, Aden, Tripoli, Mombasa, Benin City. Listen to me. When I'm in Britain, I never ever felt like I was one of them, yet I was working as one. When I send my letters from the Air Force to the telegraph people, my letters were censored.
Wow.
because I was basically speaking about what they used to call it at the time, their color problem. The color problem they had, as I saw it, was because we were all blacks coming from Africa. And if a black man had a child with a white woman, the child is black. If a white man has a child with a black woman, the child is black. We had a problem. We had and I could go through, but time does not permit. I could go through some of what happened because they send those children, they call them bastards, and send them down to Wales. And that was part of the problem, first problem Britain had with black people standing up, because when those children became adults, they want to be classified and recognized as who they were. It's out there you get your Shirley Bassey and those, by the way. Right? We could go further, but the truth of the matter is, I came back to Jamaica. And when this Windrush thing started and the whole thing, and everybody started talking about it, it's as if to say, it's today it started. It had started a long time. But now they find means and ways of trying to get rid of these people. Yet, every single Jamaican that went to Britain before 1962 and a British Jamaican British passport is supposed to be a British citizen according to the laws that I at Central Drafting Office had to study, and that was called Queen's Regulations and Ear Council Instructions. Every single Jamaican that travels under a British passport, you were given a choice. You were given a choice, yes, when we became independent, to choose whether or not you want to be a Jamaican or British. Those who chose to be Jamaicans have Jamaican passport and can go and come as they like. But those who did not, they have no right. So therefore, from the legal standpoint, so I'm speaking to you, Mr. Brown, from the legal standpoint, they are legally British, and Britain has no right to deport them. However, in Jamaica, I'm looking at the Jamaican standpoint here now. All Jamaicans, and we love to embrace each other, but we now need to, because as I said, these people are not Britishers. They don't know anything, are not Jamaicans. They don't know anything about Jamaica. So they are under British passport. And although they did not go and renew passports, some of them don't know where to get passport. They are Britishers based on the time. We became independent in 1962, even though we are not independent. Because if you go into any of our embassies, the first picture you see come up before you is the Queen. Queen Elizabeth.
Yes. Pauline, I'm going to have to stop you there.
So therefore, it is her embassy. It's not a Jamaican embassy. My attitude right now is that why the hell do we have to have her as head of state? Because they're not really, and I'm saying it clearly, Britain, the monarchy, is not at all taking any responsibility for us. They give us a governor general who is responsible to Britain, to the Queen. Jamaican people over the years do not understand that the governor general represents the Queen, therefore parish council, and I am going to explain all this because today,
but we don't have time just now, Pauline. We have to go to our, we don't have time just now for you to explain it, but we're going to just quickly go to our next speaker. So if you could just wrap up what you're saying, that would be helpful. Okay. Thank you. Quickly, yeah.
Quickly, I will wrap it up. Jamaica, and I'm appealing now to Jamaicans who are listening to me. We need to have an organization set up where we take care of, and we can have a halfway house for our deportees that they send back here to us who have nowhere to go and nothing to do. I am chairperson for the Westmoreland Disability Support Group and vice president to the Cornwall Region Disability Support Group. So those of you who are disabled and need help, you can reach out to our organization.
Excellent.
Okay? And
Thank
we
you, Pauline.
more than willing to work with you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I felt so rude interrupting you, Pauline, because your story and your experience and your service to our country and to our peoples is absolutely phenomenal. So I just want to say thank you so much. And if everyone else on the call can just show your appreciation to Pauline and things that she said by using your reactions tool, if possible, that would be great. Or just showing appreciation by clapping, but obviously off mute. It was painful to hear some of the things that you have experienced and that way you have been treated, but also deeply sobering to know that this is not something that has just happened, it's something that continues. And I think your point on that has been really poignant and kind of really drawn that to light for us. Before we go to questions, I'm just going to take a really quick speech and introduction from Councillor Ankunda. That is a Nottingham City Councillor, Immigration Advisor at First Call Immigration Services, and a board member of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Refugee Forum. Human rights and migration are of personal and political and professional passion, and a member also of the Haladine Socialist Lawyers for Joint Council for Welfare of Immigrants. So it'll be really, really helpful if Councillor Ankunda could kind of talk to us just really briefly about some of your direct experience and any points of reflection, but also any actions that can be taken by us. I think we are moving to a point where we feel very passionate and very fired up, and it's like we want to move to the point of action and solution. So if you could try and focus your talk to there, that would be really, really great. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I'm a bit jet lagged. I've just come back from Uganda. Sadly, my grandmother died, so we went during these crazy COVID times with 2 COVID tests and so on. So I've just arrived back today, but thank you to Rosemary and Kevin in particular for inviting me along. And also thank you to the speakers, Dan. Obviously, you know, what I noticed being in Uganda was that, you know, there's a lot of space and time, a lot of opportunity, and I think that's something that, you know, can be explored in Jamaica as well. And really, I wanted to say thank you to Kevin. I'd go on his show and talk back show quite a lot, and also for Pauline's testimony. I know a lot of that was really just spot on, and I suppose our elders have so much of that lived experience. I mean, what I'm going to tell you is the legal side of it, and what I do day to day as an immigration advisor, and even as a city councillor, even though I'm the Labour side, certainly this is something that for me is so important that we all really get behind in terms of challenging the current immigration policies, the hostile environment created by the Conservatives. They actually had a committee when they started with David Cameron, called the Hostile Environment Committee. How could they make legal migrants feel unwelcome in the UK and to be forced to leave the UK? And even just coming back and observing, I think the hostile environment has extended to native populations as well. Not just native, but to English and Scottish and so on. I think it's extended that far that we are seeing the disparities and the exasperation of social issues, child poverty, and other social issues that have really been affected by immigration, but in a pervasive way that's not as so obvious. Although the deportations certainly are one of those obvious ones. So say, for example, people on the Jamaica 50 flight, they were fathers, because they're mostly black men on those flights, leaving behind children, leaving behind people who will never be able to, potentially never be able to know their father. Maybe a secret in their family that they'll never want to be shared, and so on. There's so many catastrophic consequences of tearing families apart. I mean, we look at America and say, oh, Trump was terrible for what he did with the Mexicans, but we're doing exactly the same over here, even worse in some instances. But kind of relating to what Pauline said, in 1962, the Commonwealth Immigration Act came in, and that abolished the rights for Commonwealth citizens, so Jamaicans, Ugandans, well, actually Uganda wasn't independent at that point, but it abolished their right to come and live and work in the UK. And this was on the back of the 1950s riots, race riots, although the race riots go back to 1919, but you'd have the Teddy Boys and so on, and that kind of policy, and then politicians wanting to pander to that sentiment, which is what we're seeing today with the rise of Nigel Farage, UKIP. They say it's not about immigration, but if you ever speak to a UKIP member and mention immigration, you'll see their face change quite quickly, and they'll get quite irate about it. So, as I mentioned, I'm a city council. I'm also an immigration advisor. So I deal with a lot with cases that involve deportation, or cases that are applications, for example, on what they call the 10-year route to settlement. So that's where you're not, you don't come under the immigration rules, but you have a right to live in the UK on a private or family life basis. But then you are subjected to paying at least £3,000 every 2.5 years for 10 years to have to be settled in the UK. And during that process, you'll also have no recourse to public funds. So contrary to popular belief that people come over here to get benefits, that a lot of public funds are restricted, including for Europeans as well. So you may have seen the news, there's a lot of news about allowing people who are not settled but are European to have access to public funds and how they do that and so on. So it's really a complex area. But I think one of the main things I like to kind of communicate as well is to know the difference between removal and deportation. So deportation is where you've committed a criminal offence or perceived criminal offence, whereas removal is that you have overstayed your visa. And so therefore you can be, you're liable to be removed from the UK unless you can prove that you have a private and family life reason as per the European Convention of Human Rights. As a Remainer, that was my biggest concern of losing that fundamental piece of legislation that is so pivotal to all strands of immigration and asylum law. And it's really, really important that people, again, fight to protect that because the Conservatives want to get rid of it. A lot of Brexiteers were quite disappointed to see that actually the European Convention of Human Rights was continuing even after Brexit, but certainly it's something that I'm really keen for people to keep campaigning on to make sure that we maintain a good standard of human rights in the UK. Although I say maintain a good standard of human rights, it's currently in jeopardy, especially things like judicial review and public actions. Judicial review is public actions against the government for human rights violations and other public body violations. Say very broadly, very broad brush. But in terms of like practicalities, so I had during the pandemic, sadly one of my clients, long-standing clients, she was on a spouse visa. Well, she was on a spouse visa, and her husband, her sponsor, was a British national, but of Jamaican origin. And sadly, he died of COVID-19 on 15th of April, in 2020. And when he died, that meant that her status and the 2 children that she came with that he also sponsored was in jeopardy. And she could be removed from the UK. So not deported, she's not committed an offence, she can be removed from the UK. So for her to stay in the UK, she'd have to make another application together with the 2 children. And that application would be for a bereaved partner, and it would cost £2,408 each. And it actually came to about £7,224.60. Her husband, a very well-respected man, he was worked at the city council for many years, had worked in the care sector for many years, and actually encouraged the client to work in the care sector when she came to the UK to live with him. And one of the things that was really frustrating is that it's not a free scheme. It's a scheme that you have to pay for. But on 20th of May, the government announced that they were going to have a free scheme for anybody who lost a loved one during the pandemic, so long as they A, died of COVID-19, and B, were a care worker or healthcare worker themselves. And obviously, the sponsor was not a care worker at the time, was working at the council, and it wasn't working in any health capacity, so she can go under that, as it were. To cut a long story short, we did a crowd justice fundraiser, and crowd justice were really good at helping and supporting to raise the finance needed. With the sponsor being very proud Jamaican, even though he had British nationality, he wanted to be buried in Jamaica, so we were able to use some of the money that was raised to embalm the body and get it to Jamaica. And I have to say the High Commissioner of Jamaica was very helpful in making sure that this could happen. But again, it did cost money. And we did a public media campaign. And as a result of that somehow got under the skin of the Minister for Immigration. So you have the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who was belligerent, just would not ever come back come back to us, whether we go through our local MP, Lillian Greenwood, or anybody else. She wouldn't come back. But the Minister is actually Kevin Foster, MP. And we managed to get to him directly and got under his skin, so much so that he managed to allow the previous application they paid for to be refunded, which was about £6,000. So we could add the amount to the ones that the refund raised to make sure that it could happen. And then they granted it within 3 days. And to say that something could be granted within 3 days shows how much power the Secretary of State has, because it's under the 71 Act, it's all discretionary. If you applied for a visit visa, and then somehow made a representation to the Home Secretary to say that you should get indefinite leave, she could give you that indefinite leave to remain. She has that power. However, she uses that power to the reverse. So, for example, Kevin was talking about the automatic deportation if you have a 12-month prison sentence. It's what you're automatically up for it. I mean, you can challenge it, and as immigration lawyers, we do say you need to challenge it, especially on the private and family life grounds. It does cost money, but at the same time, if people can actually get out there and do a campaign to get that together, and also to get a good case together, that helps you stay in the UK. Unfortunately, if you use legal aid and so on, it may be it really varies. But in my experience, what really works is having a good barrister to represent you in a deportation action. But just to go back to the discretionary part, there's something called Operation Nexus that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of. Now, this means that, this operation is between the Home Office and the police. So say, for example, you are not a British national, you may even have indefinite leave to remain, you maybe have been settled here for years, may have been born in the UK. However, you've been accused of a serious crime. The police go to the CPS and they try and prosecute on the evidence they have, but they can't, because perhaps it wasn't you, because we have a rule in this country that no one is guilty. Well, everyone has to be beyond all reasonable doubt proven that they are guilty of that crime. So the CPS say, police, you can't prosecute, no further action. So you think, right, that's fine, I can now move on with my life. 2 weeks later, you get a letter from the Home Office. Says, well, you've been accused of a serious crime, and we think that on the balance of probabilities, so going from the burden of beyond all reasonable doubt down to a civil standard of balance of probabilities, 50-50, toss of a coin. We think you did it. So we think because of this, you should be deported. And that's what's happening right now. And that is a policy brought in by Theresa May, actually, and it is absolutely, it goes against our fundamental, human rights and so on. I've actually met somebody in my ward in Sherwood who is affected by that currently, and we're trying to work to see if we can get through to actually win the case. Although unfortunately, due to finance and a lawyer he has as well, it's quite difficult to try and get that resolved. So that's still ongoing. But what that has the effect of, though, it puts you back into thinking that you can't do anything because you're now under this accusation of a crime that you didn't commit, and the CPS have no proof, but the police used the intelligence to the Home Office to say that you should be deported. But you've not actually seen that intelligence either, by the way. So this is all, under wraps, and you know nothing about it, and that's really kind of one of the most current things that really kind of gets under my skin about immigration and deportation in particular. People remember the Jamaica 50. They remember when Sajid Javid was Home Secretary, and he said, "Oh, these are serious offenders," and etc. Some of those were under Operation Nexus. Some of them were not actually proven guilty at a court of law that they committed that crime. They had no conviction. They were deported without a conviction. Some of those were actually overturned because of that, because there are ways to fight it, but it's incredibly difficult to do that. So in terms of takeaways and actions, I think one of the things that people should be doing, and before I got into politics, as a councillor, I did a lot of community organising, and I found that finding people with stories were really an impactful way in which to do that. And as mentioned about the bereavement case, once we got the case in the press underneath the nose of the minister, he had to act he acted so quickly and so thoroughly. They even gave us a mobile number for one of the head caseworkers to make sure that this thing went through as soon as possible, and that never happens. So using kind of targeted campaigns and media and stories that resonate with people about people, again with Jamaica 50, a lot of the stories came out and people were absolutely shocked and horrified at what they found. On a personal basis, I was born in the UK. My parents are Ugandan. At the time of my birth, the new British Nationality Act 1981 had come in, and because my parents were not settled or British at the time, I was not actually British when I was born. And we got indefinite leave in 1990, and then I could register, but we weren't sure whether we could register, because you have to prove within the first 10 years of your life, each of those 10 years, you've not been out of the country for more than 90 days. And the passport that we were traveling on was my mum's, and that passport was lost, so we didn't know. So I've only literally become British last year in December, and I paid £1,349. I did the Life in UK test. I had to pass the English language requirement, although I had a university degree, so that was fine. But that kind of horrificness that you can even be born in this country, have this country. I was in Uganda. When I go there, I stay in hotels quite a lot. I don't really speak the language. It's really hard to you try and connect with your family, but you live here, and it's really, really difficult. And actually, one of the sad things with my grandmother, and what I've always regretted, is that I've never been able to really speak with her, have the relationship that so many people have with their grandparents, because they can actually communicate. So I find immigration and I haven't really talked about asylum, but Certainly immigration has been one of those factors that has made Britain and the rest of the world lose that sense of community, increased social isolation, increased mental health issues alongside that, as mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. And so but well, from experience, what I find and what I think we can maybe could help and take away today is to hear more stories that we can get out there into the people's consciousness to understand just how bad the consequences are. But going back to what Pauline was saying before, I mean, as I said, it's really great to hear from elders who have lived that and actually understand that. When she was saying 1962, I can see the act. I can see all the progress and what happened after that. So that's all I'm going to say for now before I fall asleep because I'm really tired. But thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for all of your contributions. First of all, thank you for being with us after just traveling and coming back to the UK. Like, we really appreciate your time. And obviously it is a late night and you've got jet lag. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, the work that you're doing. Salute to you and all the people that you constantly support. It must be tough, but it's also really rewarding, especially when you are able to support people just in the way that you've described. And you've also given us food for thought in terms of making sure we bring community making sure we organize as a community and bring people's stories to the fore, because as you've demonstrated, a lot can change and a lot of things can happen with that as well. So I've done really bad sharing, everyone, because do you know what, I just felt rude to interrupt, and also that this was just so incredibly eye-opening to learn and to discover. So what we're going to do is quickly go to the question and answer section, and I'll try and put everyone up on screen as well so you can direct your questions to them. But thank you for everyone who's submitted questions in the group chat and in the chat function. It's been really useful kind of just to see them and to group them. So I will attempt at grouping them now. Just give me 1 second while I do some little techie stuff to pin all the speakers. Look what I did. Wow, proud of myself. Cool. Okay, so first of all, I just want to acknowledge that people may be feeling very heavy in this meeting. And so I really don't want us to end on despair, because actually great work can be done. All of you have outlined really important things that we can kind of work on and kind of galvanize and use that sort of passion to keep moving forward. So one of the things that somebody has already asked is, and I'm not sure if I should direct this to Kevin, I think we should, just for Kevin to respond to this. But Kevin, you mentioned the issue with longer than 12-month sentences. And is there a disparity between Black people getting longer sentences for non-violent crimes than white counterparts? And is that adding to potential discrimination, especially with regards to removal or deportation?
Well, I can attempt to answer it. Perhaps Joel can also contribute as well. Some of you may have heard of the David Lammy report, which looked at disparities in the criminal justice system. So it is well documented. And actually the challenge that David Lammy is having is getting recommendations from his report to be implemented. And some of you may have been following that as well. So he has shown, and it's been already been shown by Home Office statistics, that there's a huge disparity in the criminal justice system with respect to, first of all, police contact. So it starts on the streets with stop and search. So Black people are more disproportionately stopped and searched. And then when they do get into the criminal justice system, they seem to get longer sentences for the same crime, right? So then it moves into the prison system, where then it's a disproportionately Black prison population, even though we are a minority of minorities in this country when you look at the demographics. So it's very clear that there are disparities, and yes, Azzees, you could then you could then link that to who then gets deported, and so on. So clearly, you're looking at a systemic problem, right? And this is why we need to, when we talk about anti-Black racism, it needs to be looked at from all angles. You know, so today we're talking about deportation, but we need to look at it across the board in terms of criminal justice system, the education system, people's employability, experiences, and so on. It's across the board. And you know, if you listen to Pauline, who spoke earlier, who came to Britain in the 1950s, these are problems that have been in Britain for decades now. And I'm hoping that we can, especially the younger generation, can now decide that we want a different future for Britain, one that is more inclusive and sees people as human beings, irrespective of their ethnic background.
Great, thank you. And moving over to Councillor Ankunda, is it a 1-year sentence whether or not you serve at that time in prison?
Yes, it's the sentence that counts, not time served. So, yeah,
okay.
That's it. And just as quickly with what Dr. Kevin Brown was saying, yeah, I mean, it's been well documented that people get, Black people get, or Black men in particular, get sentenced higher than their white counterparts. And I've had clients who've been caught out in that situation where they've done a crime. You can see that it doesn't quite hit the sentencing threshold, but somehow it got to that 12-month decision.
Cool. And just there's a few questions, but the regular reoccurring question that I am getting in the chat, I'm going to actually share my screen, and because I've actually been collating them whilst we've been talking. And the main thing that people also want to hear, but in accordance to just thanking you all for your testimonies and your experience and sharing your time with us today, they want to know what actions can they take. And so I've just got some on the screen just to help some with who are visual learners as well. But if there are any additional ones outside of this, then please just let me know so we can add them to our list. And it could be something that we can circulate to everyone who have signed up to attend. But one of the things that you mentioned, Councillor, was actually the community organising and bringing stories to the fore. Also, there are BAME Lawyers for Justice, and they have a lot of campaigns on change.org. So if you want to kind of support them and add your name to the charter of the Stop All Charter Flights Mass Deportations to Jamaica, you can sign that change.org there. There's also in the UK Home Office using hashtags as well. Also writing to your MPs, which I know can sometimes feel like you're writing and it's not actually getting through, but you could also support specific campaigns like the ones that Dr. Kevin Brown mentioned, such as End Indefinite Detention. There are a lot of political parties that also support that. As Councillor was mentioning about End Operation Nexus, that could be something as a campaign that people can work around and support. Also speaking about the end of deportation of people who arrived as children, and really putting your voice to saying why removed or deportation should be looked at on merit. This is also something else that Dr. Kevin Brown was mentioning. And also there are lots of campaigns against the cost of immigration applications and appeals. So you could actually put your voice and your name to those campaigns that are already out there. So don't feel like you are starting at no base. There is a base already. And for some of these campaigns that I'm mentioning, they do need some financial support and backing as well. So if you could support in that way, those are ways in which you can also help. Additionally, Rosemary and others, and I'll quickly give a quick shout out to Rosemary in a second, but Rosemary and some others really want to come together after this meeting to build a community base that links the UK, people here in the UK who are really passionate about this subject, and also those in Jamaica, so that there is, if people are removed or deported, they have a base, a community base, that same base that Diana was talking about, not really knowing much of, despite the amazing work that she does in Jamaica. So we will send this round in an email following up after, but these are some of the takeaways that I just wrote down from this meeting. Does anyone, including our speakers, have anything else that they want to add that we don't have yet covered, or ways in which people can kind of take action? Starting off with, Kevin, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think the list that you have there is very good. My encouragement would be for people to join local community groups, grassroots organizations, and especially the younger generation. There are a lot of Windrush community organizations that need refreshing in terms of younger people coming on board in leadership roles. And so I'd encourage you to get out there into the community. I know it's difficult because of COVID-19, but hopefully once things normalize, do try and engage with these organizations on different levels, not just in terms of campaigns around deportation, but just in terms of sustaining these organizations and making sure that they're there 50 years from now.
It's so true. I do just want to give a quick shout out to Councillor Cllr Lake as well, who's based in Bristol and does a lot of that community work and intergenerational work that is so needed to kind of bridge the gap and make sure that the stories that we heard from Pauline and those life experiences are not lost. And they're not just a campaign on piece of paper, but the actual stories and life testimonies. So yes, thank you. Councillor Ankunda, do you want to add any sort of other actions that people could take?
Well, I think this is a good list to start with. I think the bottom bit would the building the community base. I mean, once somebody is deported or removed, they can actually apply for the revocation of that. So it's good to know that there are potentially options for that. The review of cost of immigration applications, that continually is a big battle, especially, you can add the immigration health surcharge, which is now £624 per year, because the Conservatives believe that migrants cost more to the NHS than what they do in trying to privatise it. And also the no recourse public funds, to abolish that. That is something that I'm doing a report on, and I hope to finish that at the end of this month, together with other councillors in Nottingham. We set up a BAME commission looking at particular issues, and my area is looking at the abolition of the no recourse public funds policy, because that causes a lot of devastation within families, especially magnified even more with this coronavirus pandemic.
Well, please do share that with us, because as we know, this issue doesn't have party lines. Like, it's an issue that affects so many people that we all need to come together, whatever your political persuasion, wherever you are based, we need to come together and actually make a change. So yes, I'm about to draw this meeting to a close. I wanted to finish at 9, and I do apologize to everyone, but thank you for exercising, stretching, shaking your head, listening to music at the beginning, being so present, really declaring how the speakers that we've had today have really impacted you, have made you really recognize this situation and also feel very empathetic to the situation, but also, more importantly, active and wanting to change and make a change as well. So I just want to thank everyone who has attended today. Without you, this wouldn't have been able to happen. And also without your ears and your passion and your heart, this won't even spread further than this computer screen. So thank you all for coming. Just a few things to add. If you do want to get in touch with the speakers, are you happy for people to get in touch with you to find out more, to connect? Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, so please do find out about them and just support them where you can as well, because as you already know, they're doing amazing work. Lastly, this event was hosted by the Greens of Colour. Please feel free to follow us on social media for any other events that we are hosting and things that we're doing and campaigns that we're working on. So we also did campaign on the end indefinite detention and also the NHS surcharge as well. So you can keep up to date with about that. Even if you are not a person of color and you're an ally, we still welcome you to our membership. So do not be afraid to sign up to our mailing list. Our colleague AC has put the link to joining our mailing list and our social media accounts in the link below. So please feel free to join us. We will also be following up with those recommendations as well coming from this meeting. So the last thing I want to say to you is do not despair. This is not a good situation. This is beyond tragic for so many families, but feeling despair or overwhelming, it just won't change anything. So I do just want to give everyone a sense of encouragement. The little that we can do in our little communities, whether that's just telling somebody else, whether that's sharing a social media platform, whether that's standing on the front line campaigning for an issue, whether that's deciding to stand as a member of parliament or councillor, anything that you can do within your local community is enough, is important, okay? So I just want everyone to recognize that your voice does matter, however big or small you feel like that is, and we do need your action. So with that being said, we would also like to invite you to another event that we are hosting on the 17th of February on Zoom again, and that will be addressing Islamophobia, LGBTQI rights, sorry, wait, I'm messing this up. Sorry, one second. Transphobia, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism, how we stand against this and tackle all of these issues. So we are coming together again as a community to address these issues and think about ways in which we can provide a solution. So as I said before, please do not despair. Any action that you take is good action if it is supporting this campaign. So please make sure you do that and share your appreciation and join me by unmuting and giving our speakers a huge round of applause or using a reactions tool to just say thank you.
Woo! Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, now as you go, please have a blessed evening, have a blessed week, take care of yourself, and hopefully we will see you soon. The links are in the chat, so feel free to follow up with us as well. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Azzees. Cheers.
Great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, man.